This is Fritz Part 3. We finished our breakfast by 9 as we had planned and left for the fort. A car had already been arranged. It was almost 9:30 by the time we reached. Some of Jayanto's old forgotten memories began coming back again, though fortunately they had nothing to do with his doll. In fact, his youthful exuberance made me think he had forgotten all about it. There's an elephant on the top of the gate, he exclaimed. And the turrets? And here is the bed made of silver and the throne. Look at the picture on the wall. I saw it the last time. But within an hour, his enthusiasm began to wane. I was so engrossed myself that I did not notice it at first. But while walking through a hall and looking at the chandeliers hanging from the ceiling, I suddenly realized that Jayanto was no longer walking by my side. Where was he? We had a guide with us. Babu has gone out on the terrace, he told me. I came out of the hall and found Jayanto standing absent-mindedly near a wall on the other side of the terrace. He did not seem to notice my presence even when I went and stood beside him. He started when I called him by his name. What on earth is the matter with you? What on earth is the matter with you? I asked. Why are you standing here looking morose even in a beautiful place like this? I can't stand it. Jayanto simply said, Have you finished seeing everything? If so, let's... Had I been alone, I would definitely have spent a little more time at the fort. But one look at Jayanto made me decide in favor of returning to the circuit house. Our road through the hills took us back to the town. Jayanto and I were both sitting in the back of the car. I offered him a cigarette, but he refused. I noticed a wild excitement in the movement of his hand. One moment he placed them near the window, then on his lap, and immediately afterwards began biting his nails. Jayanto was quiet by nature. This odd restlessness in him worried me. After about 10 minutes, I could not take it anymore. I asked, I might help you if you told me what your problem is, I said. Jayanto shook his head. It's no use telling you, for you are not going to believe me. Okay, even if I don't believe you, I can at least discuss the matter with you, can't I? Fritz came into our room last night. Those little marks on my quilt were his footprints. There was very little I could do at this, except catch hold of him by the shoulder and shake him. How could I talk sensibly to someone whose mind was obsessed with such an absurd idea? You didn't see anything, did you? I said finally. No, but I could feel distinctly that whatever was walking on my chest had 2 feet, not 4. As we got out of the car at the circuit house, I decided that Jayanto must be given a nerve tonic or some such thing. A tranquilizer might not be good enough. I could not allow a 37-year-old man to be so upset by simply a memory of his childhood. I said to Jayanto upon reaching our room, It's nearly 12 o'clock. Should we not be thinking of having a bath? You go first, said Jayanto and flung himself on the bed. An idea came to my mind in the bath. Perhaps this was the only way to bring Jayanto back to normal behavior. If a doll had been buried somewhere 30 years ago, and if one knew the exact spot, it might be possible to dig the ground there. No doubt, most of it would have been destroyed, but it was likely that we'd find just a few things, especially if they were made of metal, such as the buckle of a belt, brass buttons on the jacket. If Jayanto could actually be shown that was all was left of his precious doll, he might be able to get rid himself of this weird notion. Otherwise, he would have strange dreams every night and talk of Fritz walking on his chest. If this kind of thing was allowed to continue, he might go totally mad. Gento seemed to like my idea at first, but after a little while he said, "Who will do the digging? Where will you find a spade?" I laughed. Since there's a garden, there's bound to be a gardener. And that means there's a spade. If we offered him a little tip, I have no doubt that he would have no objection to dig up a little bit of ground near the trunk of a tree at the far end of the lawn. Gento did not accept the idea immediately, nor did I say anything further. He went and had his bath after a little bit of persuasion. At lunch, he ate nothing except a couple of chapatis with meat curry, although I knew he was quite fond of his food. After lunch, we went and sat in the cane chairs on the veranda that overlooked the garden. There appeared to be no one else in the circuit house. There was something eerie about the silence that afternoon. All we could hear was the noise made by a few monkeys sitting on the gulmohar tree across the cobbled path. Around 3 p.m., we saw a man come into the garden carrying a watering can. He was an old man. His hair, mustaches, and sideburns were all white. "Will you ask him to do, or should I?" At this question from Gento, I raised a reassuring hand and went straight to the gardener. After I had spoken to him, he looked at me rather suspiciously. Clearly, no one had ever made such a request. "Why, Babu?" he asked. I laid a friendly hand on his shoulder and said, "Don't worry about the reason. I'll give you 5 rupees. Please do as you're told." He relented, going so far as to give me a salute accompanied with a broad grin. Because money speaks, you know. I beckoned to Gento, who was still sitting on the veranda. He rose and began walking towards me. As he came closer, I saw the pallor on his face. Pallor means pale face. I did doubt we would find at least some part of the doll. The gardener, in the meantime, had fetched a spade. The 3 of us made our way to the deodar tree. Gento pointed at the ground about a yard from the trunk of the tree and said, "Here." "Are you sure?" I asked him. Gento nodded silently. "How much did you dig?" "At least 8 inches. The gardener started digging. The man had a sense of humor. As he lifted his spade, he asked if there was a hidden treasure under the ground, and if so, whether we would be prepared to share it with him. I had a laugh to this, but Gento's face did not register even the slightest trace of amusement. It was the month of October, and not warm at all in Bundi, yet the collar of his shirt was soaked in sweat. He was staring at the ground unblinkingly. The gardener continued to dig. Why was there no sign of the doll? The raucous cry of the peacock made me turn my head for a moment, and in an instant Jayanto made a strange sound. I quickly looked at him. His eyes were bulging. He raised his right hand and pointed at the hole in the ground with a little finger that was visibly trembling. Then he asked in a voice turned hoarse with fear, What is that?" The spade slipped from the gardener's hand. I too gaped at the ground, open-mouthed in horror, amazement, and disbelief. There lay at our feet, covered in dust, lying flat on its back, a 12-inch long, pure white, perfect little human skeleton. Thank you.